Now let's talk about the main attachment styles. And this framework has been so unbelievably helpful for understanding and being in intimate relationships, and I want to share it with you too. It comes from the book Attached, The New Science of Adult Attachment, and How It Can Help You Find and Keep Love. This book I have read multiple times. I've gifted it to people. It is by far my favorite book on relationships, and this is what the book says. It says that while these three buckets, you can exhibit properties across more than one style, but the three core attachment styles are secure, avoidant, and anxious. Now, someone who's secure, and this is the largest group, is someone who is comfortable with intimacy, comfortable giving love, receiving love. It's usually a warm person, and probably most importantly, if their partner doesn't get back to them or is distant or is busy, they don't take that personally. They can understand that their partner is genuinely tied up and they don't feel extra neglected or abandoned and like they need a lot of extra support. Now, number two is avoidant, which out of the two dysfunctional attachment styles is the larger group. Now, avoidants are people who often were smothered or received excess attention growing up, and for whatever reason, they equate intimacy with a loss of independence, and as a result, try to minimize closeness in their relationship. So what does that mean? These are often people who want distance, they like a lot of extra space, they don't text you back as much, they don't call, they prefer to live separately even if you've been dating for years. Those are avoidants. The third group is anxious, and this is where I used to fall under. And these are people who crave intimacy, but are often so preoccupied with their relationships that they tend to worry about whether their partner loves them or not. They obsess, they rewrite their text messages 100 times, and if they don't hear from their partner, they start to really get worried. Oh my God, does he or she like me? And they overly panic, even if their partner is just busy with something else at the time. Now, some relationship dynamics worth noting. First of all, secures are the smallest percentage of the dating pool, not of the total population. But the reason that even though secures are the largest group, I work with secures the least amount because they're often in long-term relationships or they're married. These are the people, if you ever have a friend who's just always in a long-term healthy relationship, not the person who bounces from guy to guy every 3 or 6 months, but the person that's always in that 4-year relationship and seemingly is really boring and doesn't have any relationship drama in their life. See, that's one of my problems and criticisms with American media and the way love is presented is we think there needs to be all this drama and excitement and last minute things happening. But the reality is this is an intimate relationship. When two secure people come together, maybe there isn't that huge spark or huge fire, but they develop a really healthy friendship. They become best friends and then they become intimate together. Now, the problems arise mostly when avoidants date anxious or where anxious date each other. The most common problem that I see is when an anxious dates an avoidant. And this was the pattern that I went through for years and years and years before finally finding this book and figuring this all out. So what does this mean? An anxious person really wants to be in a relationship and craves love. Most likely they have become anxious because they were neglected or abandoned or didn't receive the love that they craved growing up. So as a result, they crave an excessive amount and they have self-esteem issues. So if their partner isn't responding to them, then they get really defensive and scared. Now, why does an anxious tend to date an avoidant rather than just date a secure? It's because on a deep subconscious level, we are trying to repair what happened to us as children. So when I was anxious, I used to see a secure person as either threatening because that was real intimacy or boring, and I didn't think it fulfilled like a real spark. So I would go after these avoidant, distant, shallow women who wanted a lot of space and a lot of independence because that reminded me of my mother. And we have this repetition complex where we look to find and date someone who exhibits qualities of our opposite sex parent and say, maybe this time it'll be different. I'll find an avoidant woman, but I'll get her to love me and I'll be able to fix my childhood. Very deep subconscious things happening here, but that was my pattern. And what happened, I was anxious and I was dating avoidant women and I was constantly chasing them and they just wanted to push me away and it was really, really unhealthy. So what did I do? You do two things if you're either anxious or avoidant. Number one is if you're anxious, for example, you work yourself on becoming more secure individually. And I'm going to show you how to do that in a minute. But number two, you change who you date. You date secure people. So even if you're secure and in a healthy, intimate relationship, I strongly encourage you to consider this, because there are always ways to become more secure. So that always is number one, is working on becoming more secure yourself. But number two is working on being with a partner who's also secure. Now, if you're very secure and your partner is avoidant or anxious, you can still make that relationship work. However, it's going to be harder. And once you have two people who are in one of these buckets, it's very hard to make the relationship work. So these are some excerpts from the book Attached, and highly recommend you go through it, because there are quizzes in there where you can really get some more information about where you fall in that spectrum. Pretty funny side note, Cindy Hazan, I took her class at Cornell University. She is a relationship teacher and professor. So it's funny, as I was reading that book, I noticed her. But here you can see sort of definitions for secure. I find it relatively easy to get close with others. I don't worry about being abandoned. That's secure. Then you have someone uncomfortable being close with others. That's avoidant. And then I find that others are reluctant to get as close to me. I worry, blah, blah, blah. You know, that's anxious or insecure attachment style. So remember, first thing that you want to do is choose your partner extremely consciously and wisely, and own your attachment style. So one of the biggest problems with the modern dating theory that I find to be terrible is people who are anxious are labeled as insecure and told that they need to fix themselves and they need to give their partner space and they need to man up and become more independent. And my response to that is, while yes, you can work on shifting and becoming more secure in your own attachment style, do not sacrifice your needs and try to make it work with someone who is an avoidant. Go find someone who's secure, because they're way less likely to activate your attachment system and make you feel really insecure. If you're anxious and you just go and date a secure person, that eliminates like 90+% of the whole problem, and you won't feel those feelings of being abandoned. Number two, over a 4-year period, studies show that with work on yourself, you can absolutely 100% change your attachment style. And I know this because I have been able to do that and change my style from anxious over to secure. And then also keep this in mind. The healthiest bonds can seem boring at first. We think that there's a spark missing, but that spark is actually almost always an unhealthy activation of your attachment system, and that's drama, and that's not a good thing. So she says to him, "You're everything I've always wanted to change in a man. No, don't date someone to try to change them." And another one, "I know, but I think I can change him." Vampire here. So remember, you want to date a secure partner, especially if you're anxious. It's very common to go after that avoidant styled person, most likely represents your opposite sex parent, and also focus on becoming more emotionally available yourself. One of the key reasons I was able to find all these principles was I was anxious at the time, and I was dating an avoidant woman, and I was really frustrated with how distant she was being. So I Googled, why is my partner emotionally unavailable? And I went through the list and I realized that I was like, whoa, I was being emotionally unavailable and I was attracting an emotionally unavailable partner. And the ball was in my court to work on dating a secure person and becoming more secure. One of the most secure things that you can do, by the way, is walk away from an unhealthy relationship where your partner is not secure. So how do you become more secure yourself? There are a lot of ways to do this. Number one is by going slowing down each potential relationship. Very common in anxious tendencies to try to rush things, get really serious really quickly because you feel insecure and you think, oh, if I can get really close to this person really fast, then I'll feel better about myself. Again, that's happening on a way subconscious level. But you want to slow it down to be more secure, get to know the person as a human being, and also determine if you actually want that person. Empower yourself a little bit. It's so common to date and try to impress the other person and get them to want you, but why not take a 50-50 approach and have just as much say as the other person and honestly evaluate whether or not you want to be with them? How else can you become more secure? You can choose partners that have a healthy attachment type. So focus less on things like looks and money and status and fame, and focus more on whether or not they have a secure attachment style. You can also practice self-love, self-esteem, self-care. These are great ways to boost your security. And lastly, using mindfulness, meditation, deep presence, all the things that we've been talking about there, you can actually work on self-compassion also and being easier on yourself. How do you become less avoidant? So it says here, while I used to be anxious and chase avoidant women, once I started dating secure women, I actually started becoming avoidant myself because I was trying to get some distance and space from that intimacy, which felt threatening. So Eckhart Tolle, one of my favorite quotes by him on relationships is, the greatest catalyst for change in a relationship is complete acceptance of your partner exactly as he or she is, without needing to judge or change them in any way. So once I learned how to unconditionally accept my partner, that helped me be less avoidant and more open to healthy intimacy. So stop making excuses, stop blaming your partner, take responsibility. 100% responsibility equals 100% power. Accept your partner and yourself both exactly as you are, and make less excuses. Lastly, just want to mention oxytocin here. It's a really powerful love hormone, most commonly known when women actually give birth, because that creates a bond between them and their child. But you can also develop this love hormone as well between your partner, and the best way to do so is with cuddling, which will actually increase the amount of oxytocin in your brain. That's why they say, sex actually makes you happier. So you don't need to have sex. You can get oxytocin through cuddling as well, and that will make you more agreeable, happier, less relationship conflict. And lastly, just some recommended reading. Obviously Attached. This book is absurd how good it is and how much it changed my life. So definitely check this guy out. This book helped me a lot. The Emotionally Abusive Relationship. I have been working with Beverly one-on-one for years. Power of Now has a chapter on relationships where I pulled that quote from. You might want to check that out. And then there's also a book called Women Who Love Too Much. And I hate that title because it should just say People Who Love Too Much, because what it's really talking about is people with the anxious attachment style and how they give and they give and they give and they crave and they try to pull in, and they're often dating the wrong type of person anyway. So another book worth checking out. But if you couldn't tell already, I'm obsessed with Attached, and that's your book to start with.